You know, the SAVE Act that is at the Senate right now, it's passed the House, it's in the Senate. You know, this is the single most important piece of legislation I've seen in a long time. And it should have absolutely bipartisan support. There's nothing controversial about this at all. It is to protect democracy, that which the Democrats claim that they are obsessed with, right? Protecting democracy. That's what this bill does. And I want to be clear, the Republicans, we have a majority in the Senate. It's not a filibuster-proof majority, of course, but it is within their power in the Senate, the Republican Party. They have the ability to make this bill law. And Senator Thune, who is the Senate Majority Leader, is dragging his feet. The reality is, as the filibuster currently stands, this bill's not going to be passed. But he can change the filibuster. And he doesn't even have to abolish the filibuster. Now, we know that Democrats would happily get rid of the filibuster altogether in order to pass their radical agenda. This legislation is not radical whatsoever. The only thing radical is opposing it. And I want to talk about this current filibuster and what Mr. Thune needs to do. Because this current filibuster is not a protection of democracy. It's actually a betrayal of the very reason the filibuster was created at all. The filibuster was not supposed to override elections. You know, it was an instrument to slow legislation down to give the minority party a chance to voice their opposition. And of course, to allow the American people to hear the arguments from both sides. That's the balance. There is no balance in the way the filibuster is right now. It is full paralysis. It is the neutralization of the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump and Republicans to majorities in Congress. Now, you need to understand something. The old system of the filibuster, you know, this allowed the minority party to resist, but only if they were willing to physically stand there in the Senate chamber and justify it in the open. People could watch. Voters could judge. The election still mattered. And that balance does not exist right now. Because the minority party right now, the way the filibuster exists, minority party being the party that lost, well, they can block the agenda of the party voters that the American people elected to represent them without any speeches, without any explanations. That's not checks and balances. I mean, what is the point of voting for a Senate majority if 41 senators can nullify the results without even showing up? And that's what I'm talking about here. That's what's radical about this current filibuster. It does not elevate minority voices. That's not what it does. It erases the voters' will. That's what's happening right now. And so the reality is this filibuster, which basically you just send an email effectively, oh, well, we filibuster this. That's all it requires. I mean, it does the opposite of what it was supposed to do. It's to force debate. And now it prevents debate. You know, so look, what John Thune should be saying is, look, if the minority party, in this case, the Democrats, really truly believe that this bill is dangerous, that it's unconstitutional, whatever their reasoning is, whatever their justification for opposing it, then fine, let them stand there in the chamber as long as their legs don't give out and make the case. Let the country hear it. Go ahead. Explain to people why you oppose voter ID in federal elections. So, you know, this is what's outrageous. So what I'm asking for, and what John Thune should at a minimum not just be considering, but saying he's going to do, is restore the talking filibuster. Because it restores honesty and integrity. And what we have right now is not democracy. We have a minority party that can hold this country hostage. Now, I want to talk about the SAVE Act, and I want to give you some background on it. It's not new. You know, the SAVE Act stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And this goes all the way back to the summer of 2024. That is when Republicans were a minority party, in the Senate at least. And Joe Biden, you know, his auto pin was at the ready. It was the auto pin administration. And this is July, I think, of 2024, if my memory serves me correctly. But the House voted to approve the legislation. And it was, of course, dead on arrival in the Senate. I'm talking about the SAVE Act, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. It was dead on arrival in the Senate because Democrats had the majority. And what did this bill require that the same bill now we're talking about? What do they require? What is so controversial? Well, it requires those registering to vote to provide proof of U.S. citizenship. That's number one. Number two, it compels states to purge non-citizens from their voter rolls. That's a win-win for everyone, unless, of course, one party depends upon cheating to win elections. So now we fast forward to April of 2025. This is last year. The House passed the bill again because the bill expired at the end of the 118th Congress, so it had to be reintroduced. The Senate didn't act on it then. The Democrat-controlled Senate under the Biden administration, they wouldn't take it up. And so now we've got a new Congress, and the Republicans in the House have once again passed the SAVE Act, and now it's in the Senate, awaiting Republicans there to do what is necessary. And again, like I said, there is a problem. Republicans do not have a filibuster-proof majority to overcome the 60-vote threshold to pass the bill in the Senate. Because if you filibuster, you need 60 votes to overcome it, to end the filibuster so that you can then bring the legislation forward for a vote. And Republicans don't have 60 votes. So this is why John Thune, at a minimum, should say, no, we're restoring the standing filibuster. You can filibuster us, but you're going to have to stand there before the American people and talk for 24 hours. And the point is, at some point, that filibuster is going to come to an end. This, they can just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and it requires nothing of them. So again, what does this bill do? What's so dangerous? How is this going to impact the American citizen's life? How is it going to make your life harder, more difficult, worse? How is it an affront, an attack on democracy? Again, states would be required to obtain in-person documentary proof, that would be evidence, physical papers of citizenship before registering a person to vote for federal elections. And it would require states to remove non-citizens from existing voter rolls. Nothing controversial about that. And you've got Democrats led by Chuck Schumer that are screaming about voter suppression. Yes, you know what? This is a voter suppression bill. You know whose vote it suppresses? The people who should not be voting in elections. That's who this bill suppresses the vote of, which is what we should all be for. And I think that we should just go with it. Let's say, you know what? We name this the SAVE Act. We've got another pocket name you can use, Chuck Schumer. Call it SIVA. You know, the Suppress Illegal Voting Act, because that's what we're doing. We're going to suppress the votes of illegal voters. That is, people who don't have the right to vote in our elections. I mean, you know, Democrats, and I got a clip I'll play in a minute of Chuck Schumer, they're just profoundly unserious people. Chuck Schumer says this is Jim Crow 2.0. Listen to Chuck Schumer.
There's a new Pew Research poll that 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance.
No, the Democrats used to send the KKK in to intimidate blacks and prevent them from voting. They do other things too. You know, literacy tests and so on and so forth. That was Democrats who did that. And it's Democrats, again, who are trying to prevent ICE, of course, from deporting illegals by sending in their modern KKK, the real fascists, the real Nazis, their shock troops that are trained in Minneapolis and elsewhere to obstruct ICE agents from carrying out their duties. But he says it's Jim Crow 2.0. And you know, there's another talking point out there that is, you know, this is going to really affect, you know, women. They're trying to get women all opposed and outraged about this, saying it disenfranchises them. And the reason they're moving forward with this argument to suggest falsely again that now, you know, this is unfair to women is because guess what? A majority of black people in this country support the SAVE Act. In fact, everyone supports the SAVE Act except illegals and Chuck Schumer. Listen to this. This is astounding.
The American people are with Nicki Minaj, because what are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018. You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
What about by party? What's the party breakdown?
Yeah, normally you might expect, hey, there'd be a big divide by party with Republicans really for it and Democrats really against it. But not really here. I mean, just take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. You got 95% of Republicans, pretty much all of them, but even 71% of Democrats favor photo ID to vote. So again, Nicki Minaj posting that on X, and what you see is that the American people, actually, it's not really all that controversial. The American people are with Nicki Minaj, whether they are Republican or even if they are Democrats. We're talking about 7 in 10 Democrats agreeing with Nicki Minaj that you, in fact, should show a voter ID to vote.
What's the racial breakdown?
Okay, what's the racial breakdown on this, right? Because I think a lot of people make the argument that people of color, non-white Americans, have a harder time procuring a photo ID to vote. But even here, take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of black Americans favor it. So the bottom line.
So how odd, huh? 76% of black Americans support requiring voter ID. And these are the same people that Chuck Schumer says, you know, are being targeted by voter ID. That black people, of course, are too stupid and incapable of getting an ID to vote. And yet black people support it. So again, John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, watch that again, over and over again. The majority of Democrats and Republicans agree on the SAVE Act. We have a rare piece of bipartisan legislation in which everyone in this country agrees upon. And you've got the, the terrorist organization known as the Democrat Party that is holding this nation hostage and preventing it from being passed. So do what you need to do to get this passed. It is very clear that everyone supports this, and a small minority of elected Democrats in the Senate who don't even represent their own constituents, who obviously overwhelmingly support the SAVE Act, they are telling their own constituents, go to hell, we're going to oppose this. So I'm in the process of renewing my driver's license in the state of California where I live right now. Actually, I'm in the process of getting a real ID. It's that time, and I have to upload 2 documents that prove my identity. I have to upload either a U.S. passport or my birth certificate. These are the first documents. And then I have to provide 2 documents that prove I am a California resident. So I can use a utility bill, a cell phone bill, bank statement, insurance statement, etc., tax return, property tax bill, a number of options on the table there. And it's a burdensome process just to get my real ID in the state of California. But you know what? It's the process. And so I do it. And then I get my real ID. And I mean, look, I'm in a particular situation because I actually still have a out-of-state ID that's expiring. And so I've even got to go to the DMV the DMV in person in my case. I mean, what I would say to Democrats, by the way, Chuck Schumer out there, regarding the SAVE Act and requiring voter ID, do you believe, this is the question I would ask, do you believe that voting is the most important responsibility that the American citizen has? That's my first question. Do you believe it's the most sacred and serious act in a constitutional republic? Do you believe that? If you do, if the answer is yes, you say you are so concerned about protecting democracy, well, then everything that protects the integrity of that act must matter just as much. If voting is sacred, then so is election integrity. This isn't rocket science. You don't protect democracy by ignoring the rules that make it legitimate. Now, I want to go through a couple of these arguments here from people who are opposed to the SAVE Act. One, of course, is they say, well, it's redundant. Citizenship is required to vote. Okay, well, let's go through that claim. Citizenship is required to vote. It is true. I admit that it is currently a requirement to be a citizen to vote. But that is not the same thing as verifying it. Under motor voter, in most states, they rely on self-attestation, which means you just check a box that says, Scout's honor, I'm a citizen, I'm registered. So it's an honor system, and it's not enforcement. And so if you have a rule without verification, well, it's just wishful thinking. Voter ID and proof of citizenship, they do not change who can vote. They make sure that only those people legally eligible actually do. I mean, this is like having a law that says you got to be 21 to buy alcohol, but you don't ever check an ID when someone goes to buy alcohol. So sure, yeah, legally only adults can drink. But without verification, what is it? It's reduced to an honor system. A verification is what makes the law real, and that's what's required here. There's another argument that's mute too, and this is, not many non-citizens vote in elections anyway, so they argue it's immaterial. So to go back to the alcohol analogy, is it immaterial that, not many underage kids drink when you don't even ask them to prove their age to buy alcohol? You can't even measure it. So look, I mean, that argument misses the point entirely because we check IDs so that instances of underage drinking or purchasing alcohol stay rare. Laws don't exist only when abuse is widespread. They exist to prevent it, do they not? Isn't that the reason we have laws? To discourage? And by the way, it's not even true that not many non-citizens vote. I mean, look, I live in California, right? So you would never actually even know how many non-citizens did in fact vote because the system isn't even built to detect it. California, other states, they don't require documentary proof of citizenship to register. Motor voter automatically registers people at the DMV. So you go and get a driver's license, which doesn't require proof of citizenship, and then you enroll to be a voter, and you're on the voter rolls, and you get sent automatically a mail-in ballot. So once someone's on the voter rolls, they're treated as eligible. There's no routine citizenship verification at the point of voting. So unless someone self-reports or they're caught up in some rare audit or, they commit some other crime, I suppose, that would expose it, their vote is indistinguishable from a lawful one. So of course you're going to have underreporting of non-citizens who vote because you never check it to begin with. It's like saying, underage drinking's rare when no one checks ID. How would you know how many underage kids are purchasing alcohol? You wouldn't. So, now they've introduced this new argument. Blacks, obviously, you saw there on the CNN clip, overwhelmingly support voter ID. So they've got to find a new constituency out there, which they think is women, that they can get all riled up. So this is the claim, this voter ID or citizenship verification, well, it disenfranchises women. Well, it doesn't hold up. Women are not uniquely incapable of obtaining identification. And again, when they say, well, blacks are uniquely incapable of getting, a driver's license or, it's to say that black people are somehow inferior to other people who are capable of doing it. So now they're going to take this argument and apply it to women in this country. Women can't get the job done. Are women disenfranchised from getting welfare benefits? Those require proof of citizenship. How about obtaining a passport? Can women get a passport? Of course they can. And the funny thing to me is that everywhere you look, the government is obsessed with making everything more difficult for us across the board, anything. And yet somehow with voting, we can't make that hard for you. Anything else in your life, we want to make hard to the point that, you want to open a business? No way. We're going to put so many obstacles in front of you that you will not even be able to open a business. We're going to put so many regulations on you that we're going to make it nearly impossible for you to continue running a profitable business. But voting, just show up and fill in the circle of the candidate you want. That we have to make so easy. Just wild stuff, isn't it? I want to get into Trump's midterm strategy in a minute and just kind of finish up with a SAVE Act. But first, what do 3 billionaires, 4 major banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor all have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction. Gold is headed for 10,000 or more, and it is on the rise. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%, and one respected economist believes the U.S. government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. Our friends at American Alternative Assets just released a powerful new report, The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. It breaks down these hidden signals, allows you to see exactly what the wealthiest players are seeing for free. Go to cloutgold.com to download it free, or call 855-803-GOLD. That's cloutgold.com or 855-803-GOLD. Don't wait. The window's closing fast. So DHS funding is going to run out pretty soon, Department of Homeland Security. And this will tie into Trump's midterm strategy. I'll explain to you in a minute. Because everything from here until November, just remember this, everything from here until November, midterm elections, is geared towards midterm elections. And it is very, very, very serious. We know what the Democrats are going to do if they take back the House. They're going to introduce articles of impeachment against President Trump, and he will be truly a lame duck president. His agenda will stall, and all of the hard work that we put into winning this most recent presidential election, which was truly just almost a miracle, it will have been for nothing. So while the Democrats are opposed to requiring ID, proof of identification, proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections, they are requiring, this is one of 10 demands on their list to fund the Department of Homeland Security and thus ICE, because ICE is a subsidiary organization under the Department of Homeland Security. So they don't require and oppose requiring proof of citizenship and IDs to vote in federal elections, but they are requiring ICE agents to show their identification in the streets. Badge numbers. You just can't make this stuff up. So I want to go through this list of demands here. It's quite hilarious. So Democrats have now released their full list of demands tied to ICE funding, holding us hostage once again. And what this amounts to is a deliberate attempt to cripple deportation enforcement altogether. In other words, if these 10 demands were accepted, there would be no more deportations. So they want to eliminate administrative warrants. They want to force ICE to obtain judicial warrants for routine operations, which would basically slow deportations to a crawl. They're demanding agents remove masks and display their names, as I mentioned, despite the fact, or in fact, this is because of the rampant doxing and harassment by radical activists. This is meant to deter ICE agents from doing their jobs because they know that the same radicals that are in the street carrying out their own paramilitary operation to prevent ICE from carrying out deportations, these people will post their names and faces and badges, their house addresses on the internet, and these ICE agents will fear for their lives. They want to ban operations at so-called sensitive locations, which includes courts and polling places, which turns these places into sanctuary zones where illegal criminals are routinely released. So you understand that, right? All right. They're pushing a vague restriction under the banner of racial profiling that would prevent ICE from targeting locations known for illegal activity. Open the door to lawsuits from activist prosecutors. It requires federal agents to get permission from sanctuary cities before enforcing federal law. And on top of that, they want to disarm ICE. And they even want the removal of Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, as a so-called gesture of good faith. And so, again, if these were implemented, deportations would effectively end. And that's the purpose of this. And the Democrats are willing to hold the government funding hostage to make that happen. Now, Border Czar Tom Homan. Look, Donald Trump is playing a very savvy and smart game right now. He is absolutely outmaneuvering the left. Donald Trump is not going back on anything. He's not caving to the left. He's actually extracting what he wants by convincing dumb Democrats to believe that they have actually won something. And more importantly, he's focused on taking an issue away from the Democrats that could turn out the vote for them as we approach midterm elections. So that combined with the SAVE Act, which would radically alter the Democrats' ability to win elections in this country, because Democrats do, I'm sorry, you can deny this all you want, but Democrats do depend upon illegal votes to win elections. Not every election. You've certainly got cities and states out there that are very, very blue, but the majority of this country is conservative. The radical left is a minority party in this country, less and less popular by the day. And so they would certainly have a hard time winning back majorities in Congress if the SAVE Act passes, which is why they're fighting this so hard. So, Tom Homan announced the withdrawal of 700 federal agents from Minnesota. He is framing it as a strategic shift that actually strengthens immigration enforcement. Instead of these large, risky street raids, which are only problematic because of the left's organized tactics to make a scene. Well, he's offered to return to this targeted enforcement, taking criminal legal aliens directly into custody from jails. And I think that's fine, but the problem is you need the cooperation of Democrats to hand them over. The reason you have these street raids that many people who even support deportations and ICE find somewhat appalling in the perception of it, the look of it. Well, the only reason those street raids are happening is because in Minneapolis, you have a non-compliant Democrat government that won't cooperate with ICE. Democrats, let them celebrate the agent drawdown. But the reality is that this news is not good for them because the Trump administration has made deportation enforcement more efficient, safer, and harder to obstruct. Effectively, what he's trying to negotiate and get out of this is for Minneapolis and Minnesota, these sanctuary cities and states that are out of compliance with the Constitution, that are violating the laws, and even the supremacy clause of the Constitution, he's forcing them to start behaving in a rational way. And it's good. It's good. Look, all that matters right now is winning the midterm elections. That is priority number one for this entire country. And then we've got 2 more years, if we hold the House and the Senate, to continue aggressively pushing forward with the agenda that we all voted for. I mean, Donald Trump has worked miracles. I interviewed Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, on this show on Tuesday. And if you haven't listened to that episode, a lot of things that Newt said to me that came out in that interview, I mean, they were incredibly insightful. He has an enormous perspective that few Americans in this country have. And I encourage you to go and listen to that interview. You know, it was a 30-minute interview. You know, Gingrich is a busy guy. I was so honored that he agreed to come on this show and talk to me for as long as he did. He is in Switzerland. He lives in Switzerland right now because his wife, Callista, is the ambassador to Switzerland. And so, you know, just a gold mine, wealth of information from Newt. So listen to that interview. It's out. It's on the Rumble page. It's on, you know, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this show. So it was an incredible thing. So I want to play this, and I just want to kind of finish up by talking about this midterm strategy. I want to listen to Donald Trump here. He is we've never seen somebody who can manipulate the media like he does.
Speaking of Minneapolis, what did you learn?
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch, but you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals. But look, I've called the people. I've called the governor. I've called the mayor, spoke to them, had great conversations with them. And then I see them ranting and raving out there, literally as though a call wasn't made.
I mean, look, this is just a master negotiator. And obviously he's a person who understands public perception. And if you want to be a successful politician and certainly a successful president, you have to understand perception is reality for many people. And while a majority of the American people support his agenda and support ICE and support deportations, the left was waging a very effective propaganda campaign to demonize ICE and make that a campaign issue for the midterms. The Democrats don't have anything to run on in the midterms. Everything has improved under Trump, and the Democrats oppose all of it. All they have is a bunch of talking points that can be easily and quickly dismantled with a few facts. And the Democrats were certainly relying on this ferocious, organized effort by the left to create some BLM type situation in these Democrat cities and states, you know, to motivate their base of voters. And Donald Trump is just taking that off the table. And there is no propaganda right now that can convince the American people, even Democrats out there, that Donald Trump is the one responsible for another potential government shutdown. Because here he is going on with the left-leaning news networks. He's saying, okay, I pulled 700 agents out, and he offers, you know, what if well, we can have a little bit of a softer touch. So Donald Trump sounds like a very reasonable person. You will never, ever hear Democrats say anything close to that. They'll never apologize for anything. And Donald Trump said, okay, yeah, all right, fine. I got the message. We'll take a gentler approach. But, you know, these are bad guys, and we still got to go after them. And that's what people are going to remember. And so he's already made the concession. Everybody understands. Look how reasonable he is. He didn't bring the temperature up in the first place, but it doesn't matter. He's obviously trying to bring the temperature down. He talks about the phone calls he's had with these people. They were great conversations, he says. I couldn't believe the way they were talking after these conversations. I thought they were great. Look at how he's setting himself up. He's talking in kind terms about his, you know, people who declare themselves his own enemies. He seems magnanimous. And the Democrats, meanwhile, are saying, no, it's not enough. You've got to you've got to allow us the ability to dox ICE agents. You've got to do all. He's like, no, wait, whoa. I've already made all these things. You know, I'm just trying to get them from jails. Can you guys cooperate? You guys are going to shut down the government over this and affect people's lives again? They've lost. He's got the higher ground. But now what needs to happen is Senator Tom Tillis, Senate Majority Leader, or who is it? Tom Tillis, I guess, actually the Majority Leader. I might have it mixed up, you know. But, you know, the Senate Republicans have got to go on a communication campaign to bring the message that I'm bringing. I mean, look, I'm available. I would even do it for free. You want somebody to go out there as your Spocks? You want somebody to explain this succinctly to the American people? I'll do it. You know, Stephen Miller might be too tied up, you know, running Venezuela and plotting, Cuba's next. I mean, that's a busy guy. But look, it's simple. A vast majority, this is the message. This is the message, folks. The vast majority of the American people, regardless of party affiliation, both Democrats and Republicans, agree that we need to protect our democracy, especially ahead of the midterm elections. We want to make sure that the results are accepted. You've got Democrat politicians out there saying Trump is trying to steal the election. We want to make sure that everyone accepts it. And the best way to do that is to support the American people who say they want IDs. And that's what we're going to do. And the Democrats in the Senate who oppose this are opposing the will of their own voter base and constituents. More than 75% of Democrats support this, and you are telling them that you're going to nullify the will of the American people. You know, we as the Republicans in the Senate take our oath of office seriously. We see that the American people support this legislation and that it is important, bar none, the most important piece of legislation before us. And, you know, we are going to go back to the old filibuster rule that requires you to stand here physically and debate and make your case to the American people why you won't even support Democrats in your constituency who want this legislation passed. But we're not going to allow you to hold the American people hostage anymore with this email version of a filibuster. It is unfair and it is nullifying democracy itself. Democrats in the Senate are nullifying democracy right now. And it's a perfect message. That's what they've got to do. So anyway, just understand that, folks. You know, there's a game afoot. It's all about midterm elections and winning those elections. And it is significant. We have to do it. And Trump, as Newt said on my show on Tuesday, you know, if he makes this election about him, if he goes out and campaigns, if he makes sure that people understand that this midterm election is just as important as the presidential election, then we will win. If he doesn't do that, we will lose. So that's what we have to do before us. All right, folks. It's great being with you again today. God bless you all. This is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. Until next time.